Russia continues to lose friends and allies. Following Azerbaijan and Armenia, Uzbekistan is also setting sail from the unfriendly harbor. In Tashkent, people are openly tired of Moscow's imperial and xenophobic policies. Just like Azerbaijanis and Tajiks, Uzbeks constantly face discrimination and aggression in Russia. Moreover, everyday Russian racism has now been picked up by the official Kremlin machine. Migrants are being blamed for all the troubles of the so-called superpower and its god-bearing people. A real witch hunt has been unleashed against them. Numerous violations have been recorded. There have been complaints and appeals, including from our program. But nothing changes. What is this? A total lack of staff? An unwillingness to work? Or is it a blatant hint at corruption? One of the main problems with migrants is their reluctance to assimilate. Natives of Central Asia speak and understand Russian poorly. At the same time, they don't learn the language and aren't interested in our traditions or culture. For a long time, the leadership of the Uzbeks turned a blind eye to the openly hostile actions of fascists, and not against the neighbor who is destroying their people. President Shavkat Mirziyoyev even went to Moscow for the May 9th parade and shook hands with the untouchable Führer. But even he ran out of patience after just a month. In June of this year, Uzbekistan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs summoned the Russian ambassador and sent an official note of protest due to numerous complaints. Uzbeks faced rude treatment and endless inspections in Moscow. Pogroms against migrants have become something commonplace in Russia, just like in the Third Reich. The hate propaganda on federal channels has turned the felt boot-wearing population into a feral mob that sees enemies everywhere. Russian law enforcement agencies are now no different from the ultra-right Black Hundreds. And, as a rule, they act together. It was the residents of the Moscow suburbs who complained in the clinics, not the migrants. There are only migrants in the shopping malls and in schools. A teacher, this was a very high-profile case, refused to teach at a particular school because it was mostly Uzbeks and Tajiks there, with very few ethnic Russians in the schools. The latest brutal OMON raid in Moscow's Strogino district sparked outrage among Uzbeks. People were grabbed and beaten based on their ethnicity. There were many Uzbeks among them. Here, Boris, take a look. At us walking. Here. He went. Here, Boris, look, we're slowly walking. We're steadily walking along, just moving forward, step by step, making progress with each stride. It was a demonstrative act of intimidation. No charges were brought. They just terrorized people simply and solely because of their ethnicity. Racist. Racist. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Uzbekistan called the raid an unfriendly act on the part of Russia. And that's putting it very mildly, considering what the racists are doing. Human Rights Watch recorded hundreds of cases of discrimination, unlawful detentions, extortion, and humiliation of migrants from Central Asian countries, including Uzbeks, in just 1 month. People describe life in Russia as constant fear and humiliation. Having documents offers absolutely no protection from lawlessness. People are detained without reason, kept in unsanitary cells, and forced to pay bribes. And the new trend. They are being forced to sign contracts with the Ministry of Defense to be sent to war. Right now in Russia, Z-Patriots and Vatniks are spreading the idea that while our Russian boys in their underwear are defending Kostromov from Banderites in Ukraine, the incoming migrants are taking jobs and women in the rear. That's why all non-Russians urgently need to be sent to the slaughter as well. The investigative department, under my authority, is conducting regular raids in places where migrants are located. together with the Ministry of Internal Affairs and the National Guard. For what purpose? We are catching citizens of the Russian Federation who obtained citizenship as foreigners but did not register for military service, even though they are required to do so. We've already caught 80,000 of them. These are the kind of Russian citizens who not only don't want to go to the front, they don't even want to show up at the draft office, just like this hero here. They could be sent to the front lines. Of course, there are many among the migrants who voluntarily go to get packaged in Ukraine. But Uzbeks have a clear attitude towards such things. They are tried as mercenaries. Recently, a former Wagner PMC fighter was sent to prison. In 2022, he was recruited while serving time for murder. He was lucky to survive and receive a pardon. But when this new Russian elite returned to Uzbekistan, he was in for a surprise. A citizen of Uzbekistan, previously convicted for drugs, got 5 years. He was restricted in his freedom at home for participating in combat as part of the Wagner PMC. According to him, he did not join voluntarily. He was forced to sign the contract. He was coerced in the prison colony, where, as he claims, 3 inmates were shot in front of everyone for refusing. The Uzbek authorities have not openly criticized Putin, but their actions already speak for themselves. Russian fascists continue to create a ring of enemies around themselves because they are absolutely convinced they have the right to humiliate and oppress other peoples. Because they think they're great. And everyone else are just backward natives to whom Moscow graciously gifted civilization. But I used to think things were good here in Russia, but it turns out they're not so good after all. And we'll tell him, shut your trap. Who are you, anyway? As we say around here, who do you think you are? One of those ex-big shots or something? Shut your mouth. First, prove that you even deserve to be called Russian. Actually, the discussion, even at the everyday level, always ends up going there. But in reality, Uzbekistan is actually one of the cradles of human civilization. The Great Samarkand, a contemporary of Rome, was founded in 700 BC. Back then, not only were there no cities on the territory of Moscow, there wasn't even a digging stick. Bukhara in Uzbekistan was founded in the 6th century BC. It was a cultural and scientific center of the Middle Ages. For many centuries, the city was one of the largest in Central Asia. The Great Silk Road passed through it. The people of Uzbekistan were developing poetry, mathematics, and astronomy long before the ancestors of Russians were learning through trial and error. Like, for example, not to eat wolfberries. And they also competed in cow patty throwing, which, in principle, they're still doing today. Whoever hit the most spectators was the winner. Maximusko with the American football turned out to be the best. In the Middle Ages, when Moscow was paying tribute to the Horde, Uzbek Tamerlane conquered half the world and created an empire stretching from India to the Black Sea. Tamerlane was born in Uzbekistan and made Samarkand his capital. Timur turned the city into the largest cultural, scientific, and architectural center of the East. Many people know about the European Renaissance in the 14th to 15th centuries. Da Vinci, Raphael, Petrarch, Dante. But Uzbekistan was also one of the driving forces of the Renaissance era. The Timurid Renaissance reached its peak in the 15th century. This was a period of flourishing arts and sciences in the empire. During the Timurid era, there was a revival of interest in Persian classics. Large-scale construction of grand architectural structures began. Mausoleums, madrasas, caravanserais, gardens. Sufi poetry developed with a focus on human relationships, which, by the way, still doesn't exist in Russia. Honestly, I don't even want to comment on this situation. It's almost indecent to even compare this period with Moscow. So, who brought civilization to whom? Who is the big brother to whom? That's a big question. Migrants. Migrants are different, too. Well, it happens. As for, say, Uzbeks, yes, here in Ugra and part of the Tyumen region, this was historically the Siberian Khanate. It was ruled, as is well known, by Khan Kukum. He was the last ruler. This is the Shaybanid dynasty. The Shaybanid dynasty was the ruling Uzbek dynasty originating from the Bukhara Khanate. Maybe migrants used to come here for historical reasons? Let's get to the question. There's no question, it's just an answer. The Uzbeks are gradually changing their external orientation and moving away from Moscow towards more reasonable and authoritative partners. Against the backdrop of broken relations with Moscow, the Uzbek foreign ministers met with their Chinese counterpart and they agreed to form a strong friendship, bypassing Russia. Beijing has effectively squeezed out Moscow's influence in this region like a pimple. China is gradually drawing Uzbekistan into its sphere of influence. And they're doing it gently through money, infrastructure, and integration into transport and economic chains. China has been Uzbekistan's largest trading partner since 2019. Trade turnover has exceeded $12 billion, surpassing Russia. The Chinese are actively investing in infrastructure and industry. And most importantly, just like 1,000 years ago, Uzbekistan has once again become a key transit hub on the new Silk Road, which is now called One Belt, One Road. The leaders of the 5 Central Asian countries and China have signed documents on cooperation in implementing the initiative. One Belt, One Road. Inspired by the ancient Silk Road, it has become the foundation for major joint initiatives and promises significant benefits to the countries of this vast region. The Kremlin has nothing to counter Beijing with because it is itself dependent on China. Even more so than Uzbekistan. Politically and economically, Moscow has become a province of China and not even the most important or wealthy one. By attacking Ukraine and continuing the war, Russia has been forced to beg China for help and sell its resources at embarrassingly low prices. As a result, Moscow has completely lost its agency. And this has been understood in the West. It's obvious to everyone that the leash around Putin's neck leads straight to Beijing. That's why sanctions and demands to end the war are now, in effect, addressed directly to the Chinese. Trump's 50-day ultimatum isn't aimed at a raw materials appendage, it's an ultimatum for Xi Jinping. Because secondary sanctions will hit China directly. And Putin, your turn is coming. Donald Trump is the Scotty Scheffler of American politics and foreign diplomacy. And he's about to give you a real beating. If China stops buying Russian oil and stops supplying goods to Russia, the war will end very quickly. She could literally order Putin to leave Ukraine. That's why it's no coincidence that the ultimatum's deadline is approaching. On September 3rd, when China will be holding an international forum dedicated to the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. Putin has already been invited, and most likely Trump will be invited as well. There couldn't be a more convenient moment to force the aggressor to make peace. The ultimatum timer is ticking specifically for Beijing. It's up to the Chinese to decide what they will choose, to end the war in Ukraine on the anniversary of the end of World War II, or to start World War III on that very day. Which is unlikely. Because trading with Europe and America is much more profitable than feeding a half-starved, half-collapsed pseudo-empire.
I would like to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. Our goal is not to mislead, but to highlight humor. Please take it with a smile.